Jacqueline Shortland joined us at the gallery for a quick chat about her work, her training and her inspiration. She started by telling us about her background.
I went to Grays as a mature student in 2004 at 36, having had quite a career already in recruitment, and finally decided to follow a sort of childhood dream. So I went to Grays in 2004 and I graduated in 2009 from the sculpture department, and was their first graduate in residence in the sculpture department, which at the time we weren't really sure what that meant. And then you're thrown out in the world. And it's a very different world.
What media did you use when you were at Grays?
That was the thing. I think during my course at Grays, I used everything from mirror polished stainless steel to wood to carving 7-foot Barbie out of foam with a cheese grater. So, you know, at art school you have the opportunity to explore your ideas in all sorts of mediums.
And how did you end up with using ceramics?
That's an interesting one, actually, because I didn't really use clay at all at Grays, and I was asked to do a commission, and that took me to clay, and initially to paper clay, because it has a lot of sculptural strength. So I worked on those for 2 years, perfecting the method of making, which is hollow, there's no armature involved, there's no internal structure, built just out of clay. Paper clay is basically an earthenware clay with paper pulp mixed into the structure, so whilst you're working it, it's incredibly strong, you know, can stand up rigid when it's leather hard, and then once it's fired in the kiln, the paper burns out, so then it becomes ceramic like any other. So it's a really useful clay for sculpture and large scale sculpture. And from paper clay I started to use more architectural clays and experiment with that, because I think as an individual my practice really revolves around experimentation. I do like to continue to push, and so I've used porcelain this time. It's porcelain paper clay again, which I felt would have the similar strengths, but it didn't. It's much more temperamental, just like porcelain itself, and fluid and more like fabric. It works more like fabric. So there's a lot more looseness than this. And also, because it was winter, it was quite difficult to dry.
Everybody's now watching, you know, the great, what's it called, the
yes,
pottery
throwdown.
And every series you watch, they talk about the kiln gods. So are your kiln gods friendly or vicious?
They so far they have been incredibly kind to me, and I think to the point where I got a little bit blasé, and thought that I could shove anything through the kiln and it would be fine. I use a friend's electric kiln for bisque firing, which is the first firing process that the work goes through, and that's pretty stable. But I have a gas kiln at home in my studio, which is much more unpredictable, and that can be quite hard going for the work, and I have lost a couple of pieces through the gas kiln. It's more difficult to gauge what temperature it's got to, and it can cause a lot of thermal shock as well with cooling down, because it's outdoors. So weather plays a big part in what happens with my work.
Tell us about this particular body of work, the subject, and what went into the making. Why choose that subject matter?
Well, I think that is one thing that's continued throughout my artistic career, is working with the face. I started at Grays very much working through identity and concepts surrounding how we form identity and what that means to us. So the face has always been something that's really fascinated me. And then once I had my daughter, she inspired me a great deal because they have such innocence through their face and such wonder. So it kind of really keeps my interest. She changes so much. So this body of work really revolves around what it is to be human and to exist in the world that we exist in now, which can be difficult and can be quite dark. But where I stay, we immerse ourselves a lot in the nature around us, and we have woods outside our front door and outside our back door. So as soon as we leave our house, we're in the mud and the woods and the earth, and surrounded by farm machinery and very organic structures. And that's really inspired a lot of my work and the colours that come through my work. But also, I tend to smoke fire it so that there is that element of darkness. Because to me, it's hard to explain, but being out in nature, it's so changeable. You can be out on a beautiful, bright, sunny day, and then all of a sudden it's pouring on you or it's really cold. And I think that's something that I really enjoy, that contrast. Being a Londoner, we didn't really have seasons, not like we do in Scotland, and that's something that really inspires me.